Hey, welcome. So today we're going to tackle a huge idea: how one of the absolute bleakest events in history, the crucifixion, is seen by so many as a source of deep, unshakable hope. Let's dive in. Okay, to kick things off, let's just think about two words. Two words you could use to judge the exact same situation. Now, the facts don't change, but these words, they change everything about how we see it. And here's what's so interesting. Bleak and hope aren't really about the situation itself. There are judgments about it. It's all about our perspective, right? One person sees a desperate, dead-end scenario, while someone else, looking at the very same thing, finds a purpose, a path forward. And this really gets to the heart of it. Can a situation that is just objectively awful, can that actually be the very thing that creates hope? To really dig into this, the sermon we're looking at uses this incredible real-life story. So let's talk about Charlotte Lottie Moon. Her life is this powerful analogy for finding hope right in the middle of a truly bleak reality. So Lottie Moon was brilliant, came from a wealthy family, and was actually one of the very first women in the US to earn a master's degree. But she dedicated her life to being a missionary in China, a place going through massive turmoil. For almost 40 years, she just served. She became known as the Cookie Lady to build trust with the local people. All the while, she was constantly writing back home, begging for more help, more funding, help that almost never came. And this is where the story gets incredibly tough. It shows you the personal cost of her dedication. She literally gave her own food and money away to the starving people around her. When she was finally put on a ship to go back home, she was so sick, so malnourished, that she weighed just 50 pounds. She died on that journey. By any measure, that is a bleak, tragic end. But, and this is a huge but, that is not where her story ends, not even close. When the news of her death and the story behind it got back to the churches in America, it sparked a movement. Today, there's a Christmas offering in her name that over 16,000 churches take part in. It raises millions upon millions of dollars to fully fund thousands of missionaries. A truly bleak situation became the seed for unbelievable hope. And that powerful idea, that a bleak end can have a hopeful purpose, is the exact same lens the sermon uses to look at the cross. It presents Jesus facing his own death, not just as a victim, but as someone who is there to fulfill a very specific divine purpose. You see it right here in this passage from John. Jesus himself says, "Now is my soul troubled." But the sermon argues this isn't just about being afraid of physical pain. I mean, the cross was a horrific way to die, of course, but the text suggests his agony was coming from something much, much deeper. So, why was his soul troubled? Well, according to this theological view, it comes down to two massive things. First, as a perfectly holy being, he was about to take on the weight of all human sin, the very thing he despised. And second, he was about to face that separation from God that sin creates. And yet, even in that torment, he says, "But for this purpose I have come to this hour." He's choosing it. All right, so how on earth does this incredibly bleak event actually bring hope? The sermon breaks it down into three key arguments. Okay, but before we jump into the first point, we gotta get our heads around one key word: glorify. In this context, it doesn't just mean to praise something. It means to reveal God's true character, to show the world who God really is. So let's walk through this. The sermon gives us three core reasons why the cross is actually a source of profound hope. First up, it glorifies the Father. The idea here is that the cross reveals God's true nature, his absolute holiness, and his deep opposition to sin. And then, the resurrection that follows reveals his ultimate power over death itself. Okay, the second reason is that the cross judges the world. The thinking here is that the moment Jesus died was the moment that sin itself was judged. The text says, "Now will the ruler of this world be cast out." So, what does that actually mean? Well, the sermon offers a couple of main interpretations. The first is that Satan, who is seen as the accuser, is basically thrown out of this symbolic heavenly courtroom. He can no longer point the finger at believers. The other view is that sin's ultimate power, its stranglehold on humanity, is broken, freeing people to become something new. And that leads right into the third, really powerful reason for hope. The cross invites all peoples. You have to remember, before this, salvation was largely seen as being for the Jewish people. But Jesus says that when he is lifted up, he will draw all people to himself. That includes Gentiles, everyone. The invitation suddenly became universal. So this universal invitation, it completely changed the game. It introduced a totally new paradigm, a
a new way for people to relate to God that was based on something surprisingly simple.
The Old Testament way involved this complex system of rules and repeated animal sacrifices. It was, a lot of work. The sermon argues that this new way that started with the cross is radically different. It's based on one simple action: belief. Jesus is presented as the final, one-and-done sacrifice, offering people rest from that old, burdensome system. You can imagine how revolutionary that would have sounded at the time.
And this whole shift is summed up in this direct invitation. Jesus tells the crowd that the light, which is him, is only with them for a little while longer. There's a real sense of urgency here, right? He's basically saying, the time to choose is now.
Which brings us right back to where we started. From the sacrifice of Lottie Moon to the theology of the cross, the core message is really consistent. It suggests that maybe true hope isn't about finding a life that's free of bleakness. Maybe the greatest hope is found when we search for purpose right in the middle of it. It asks us to consider if our absolute hardest moments could actually become the source of our greatest strength.